Good morning, listening to Paul Brands here on LBC. Great to have your company this Sunday morning. What an extraordinary couple of weeks it's been with the post office scandal. The way that was rocketed up the agenda by a TV drama. Is it time to make one then about the infected blood scandal as well? Is that what we need to do in order to get people affected by that scandal? The real compensation, the real sense of closure that they deserve too. What about other scandals? The Grenfell fire, for example. That inquiry's still rumbling on. It's now 6 years almost. I think in about June it'll be 6 years since the fire at Grenfell Tower. And yet those people still haven't been compensated, still haven't been given proper answers to what happened to them. Why does it take us so long in this country to help those affected by these most horrendous scandals? Why does it take a TV drama for the sympathies of the British government to go out to these people to a sufficient extent that they are compensated and given the closure that they deserve? I want to ask this hour, is it time now to turn serious attention and effort to resolving scandals like the infected blood scandal? What other scandals would you like to see the government finally put their real effort into, to really put their backs into, to finally get some justice and some compensation for those affected? 0345 6060 973. You can text me as well, 84850. But let's turn our attention to the infected blood scandal, because I think that is perhaps the scandal where you can draw real parallels between the fight that those people have had and the fight that those sub-postmasters have been through. Let's talk to Jason Evans, who's director and founder of Factor VIII, which is, of course, the campaign for the victims of the contaminated blood scandal and their families, and also to Des Collins, who's a founder and senior partner at Collins Solicitors, and he specialises in civil litigation and represents 1,500 victims of the infected blood scandal. Good morning to both of you.
Morning, Paul.
Jason, I'll start with you. When you watched the post office drama or came across coverage of the post office drama and the scandal that those sub-postmasters have been through, did you see parallels between your fight and the fight that they've had on their hands to try and get some compensation and some justice?
There certainly are those parallels there in many forms. And I think perhaps the most obvious one, the one that's, just striking everyone in the face, is a protracted and long drawn-out campaign for justice and for the right thing to be done. They've had to do that in the post office scandal. We've had to do that in the infected blood scandal. And there is a massive question here, which I think you've alluded to in the intro, is why does it take so long simply to get justice when you or your family is impacted by one of these kind of en masse scandals?
And just remind us for a moment, Jason, I'm sorry that you have to do this so frequently, but just remind us what happened to your dad, because I think we do need to get across the human impact of the scandal that you're here to represent this morning, because sadly, families still don't have the compensation that they deserve, and until they do, you're going to have to keep on fighting and articulating your personal tragedies.
It certainly seems that way. So, in my personal family situation, my father, Jonathan Evans, he, like virtually all haemophiliacs in the 70s and 80s, began to be given what was then a new treatment for haemophilia called Factor VIII, haemophilia being a blood clotting disorder. It's manageable, but the treatment changed in the 70s and 80s to a very dangerous product called Factor VIII, which was made by mixing together the plasma donations of many, many thousands of people. And that was despite a warning 20 years earlier, before these hit the market in the 70s, from the World Health Organization in 1953 saying, do not make these products. And the inquiry has that document on their website. But nonetheless, my father was given these products. He was infected with hepatitis C and HIV, and he died of AIDS when I was 4 years old in 1993. And as far as the hepatitis goes, it was every bottle of this product, every single bottle of it was infected with hepatitis C. And I think it's really important for people to understand that this wasn't some unfortunate by chance, by accident situation. Every bottle of this product was infected because of that dangerous mixing process that was involved.
And, you know, it doesn't need stating the impact that it would have had on you as a young boy losing your dad. But I'm interested in another impact that all of this has on people, and watching the post office scandal, one of the things that really comes across is just how much it takes over your life, having to fight for justice and compensation then. I mean, what's that been like for you? You must feel like this is just something that is constantly hanging over you, that you've had to put so much energy and time into.
It's round the clock, every day. Wake up thinking, okay, what are we doing today in the campaign? Are we heading to Westminster? Are we doing media rounds? Are we lobbying politicians? Are we speaking to the lawyers? It's, you know, and you go to bed thinking about the day's events. What are we going to do tomorrow? It is a full-time job that nobody actually asked for. And that's not just me. That's many campaigners out there that have been fighting on this issue, including many of those who have died. My own father, he was campaigning on this in the late 80s, the early 90s. I have a letter here from a meeting I went to when I was aged 1 in 1990 with my dad to see his MP about infected blood compensation. I'm now 34.
So this has defined your whole life since the age of 1.
I mean, my dad was 31 when he died. I'm 34 now. And yeah, I mean, many people have been fighting this for a long, long time. And sadly, many of those people who were forefront at the campaign, people like Julian Miller, he was really at the forefront of this in terms of HIV in the 80s and early 90s. He's died. So many people, so many names I could mention that are just not here now.
And Des, I want to bring you in as well. I know that you're here to talk specifically about the infected blood scandal, but from your experience of dealing with that and your legal experience more generally, do you think it's sort of made deliberately difficult at times for people to get compensation, to get justice? It feels like so many barriers are deliberately erected for people fighting these scandals.
I think there is a degree of deliberation about it. I think it very often starts with carelessness, an inability to come to terms with the reality of the situation which the government in this case is facing. And that carelessness, when challenged, becomes a deliberation. In other words, how dare you challenge us for not doing this? And if you challenge us for not doing this when you say we should, we will deliberately make your life so difficult that you will never pursue it successfully in the future. So there's a degree of both. Depends at what stage you are in any particular campaign, particularly the blood campaign at the moment. There's no doubt in my mind that it is at the moment quite deliberate. It's not carelessness. This government was told back in April last year to put in place a system of compensation, and it has deliberately ignored it. I mean, you might say, well, that they were told by a public inquiry. So Brian Langstaff, as head of that inquiry, made it quite clear what he wanted the government to do. But they simply said, no, we're not going to do it. Now, if that isn't deliberately ignoring the views of the campaigners, deliberately ignoring the decision of the inquiry, I don't know what it is.
And there's so much more to be done in terms of the infected blood scandal, but at least the campaign has got as far as it has now. It's a good way down the road. But it strikes me that you have to effectively get lucky and capture the imagination of an MP or two as well in Parliament. There must be so many scandals out there that have had very little representation. I mean, you've got Dame Diana Johnson fighting your corner, and she's quite a senior MP as chair of a committee as well, and that's helpful. James Arbuthnot, who helped with the post office scandal. There doesn't seem to be any real fairness to the fact that people have to basically beg an MP to get involved with them to raise their plight in Parliament before so many of these scandals have any chance of being heard.
Yes, I mean that's clearly right. It's a lottery. Simply, if you've got the right MP, possibly the right lawyers, possibly the right campaign group coming together at one moment in time. And now we see with the post office scandal, the right media attention at a moment in time, then yes, you will move it forward. But it shouldn't be like that. This should be something. We don't live in a perfect world, and it should be something which the campaigners, the victims, are entitled to as a right. As going back to what I said just now about the decision of the public inquiry. To some extent, it was a lottery as to whether there would be a public inquiry. It took a long time for Theresa May or any government to put this inquiry in place. But having put it in place, the least you could expect would be that the government, which is hosting this inquiry at the moment, would say, "Okay, guys, you've made a decision. Let's move on that now." But using that as another delaying tactic defies belief.
And Jason, just remind us what it is that you need now, the stage that you've got to with the campaign. What are you still waiting for?
Well, basically, Des has mentioned there, the Infected Blood Inquiry published its final compensation recommendations in April last year. We want the government to implement those recommendations in full, because what's going on at the minute is the government are being dragged to action. There was a lot of coverage just at the end of last year where we defeated the government in a vote in Parliament. And, you're just talking there actually about support from MPs in Parliament. It's actually even more difficult than just getting support from an MP in Parliament, because even though we won this vote last year, which inserted a clause into the Victims and Prisoners Bill, which, if that becomes legislation, will basically force the government to implement a compensation scheme for victims of the infected blood scandal. In the run-up to that vote, it was clear that many Tory MPs were either going to abstain or vote for that amendment. And so the government put a 3-line whip on it. And so not only do you need the support of an MP, you also need an MP who's willing to go against a 3-line whip, risking career opportunities and whatever else. And as that stands now, that bill is due to start committee stage in the House of Lords on the 24th of this month, where through Baroness Brinton, we've been able to table a further amendment, which is to get interim compensation payments made to all bereaved families, which is not the case at the moment. Most families can't access any compensation at all. And so, the overarching point is, although we're making what seems to be progress, the government are being dragged to act. And as Des said, it shouldn't be that way. They should be proactively doing the right thing.
You've done so much incredible work on this. All of you have campaigned for it. And I don't want to diminish that work for a moment by being flippant about the power of TV drama. But a serious question, has anyone approached you about maybe making a drama? Maybe that would be something that would help to elevate the campaign even further.
Those discussions about all kinds of projects have happened frequently, but I know as I'm sure Des will know, having both of us being involved in various kinds of projects over the years, these things take time, and in particular a drama takes time, and we would hope the government would act long before we could hope to have a drama broadcast, and simply it shouldn't take that. But clearly in the post office case, it has been helpful in getting the public to understand, and the resulting pressure has forced action, and it's both positive and negative. You can see both sides of why it's a good thing and a bad thing.
No, I think it would be quite depressing if we had to wait for a TV drama or something before the government took action. What would it be next? A drama about the cost of living crisis, or a drama about the war in Gaza, etc., etc., etc.? We can't just rely on TV dramas in order for action to be taken. Jason, thank you very much for your time, and thanks to Des Collins as well, who's founder and senior partner at Collins Solicitors and represents people fighting for justice and compensation in the infected blood scandal. And that was Jason Evans as well there, who's a director and founder of Factor VIII, which is the campaign that is doing so much work to try and get them what they deserve. Do you think it's time now that the government did step up? It can't wait for another TV drama, can it, on the infected blood scandal, for example?